Adrian Chen adjusted his tie for the third time as he walked up the stone steps of St. Matthew's Cathedral. The massive Gothic building looked like something out of a fairy tale, with its towering spires reaching toward the cloudy September sky. He couldn't help but shake his head at the extravagance. His college buddy Tyler really knew how to throw a wedding. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, even a few Teslas. Adrian's own black Porsche fit right in, though he sometimes wondered if all this wealth was really necessary. At 32, he'd built his tech company from nothing more than an idea and a laptop in his dorm room. Now, with $50 million in the bank, he could afford anything he wanted. But somehow these fancy events always left him feeling empty. He checked his phone one more time. No urgent emails. Good. His business partner Kevin had promised to handle everything for the weekend, though Adrian knew that was probably wishful thinking. Being the CEO of a rapidly growing software company meant the phone never really stopped ringing. Inside the cathedral, the atmosphere was buzzing with excitement. Guests filled the wooden pews, all dressed in their finest clothes. Adrian spotted familiar faces from college scattered throughout the crowd. He nodded to a few people he recognized and made his way toward the front, where Tyler had reserved him a seat in the third row. The organ music began to swell, signaling that the ceremony was about to start. Adrian settled into his seat and watched as the wedding party began their procession down the aisle. Tyler appeared at the altar, looking nervous but happy in his black tuxedo. His groomsmen filed in behind him, all wearing matching gray suits. Then came the bridesmaids, walking in pairs down the long aisle. Each wore a flowing emerald green dress that caught the light streaming through the stained glass windows. Adrian half watched, his mind already drifting to the business deal he'd been working on all week. That was until the cathedral doors at the back suddenly creaked open. A young woman slipped inside, moving as quietly as possible. She was clearly trying not to disturb the ceremony, but her entrance caught Adrian's attention immediately. Even from a distance, he could see she was beautiful. Not in the polished, perfect way of the other bridesmaids, but in a more natural, authentic way that made his breath catch. Her dark hair had come loose from whatever style she'd attempted, with a few strands framing her face. She was slightly out of breath and her cheeks were flushed pink, probably from running. The emerald dress she wore was identical to the other bridesmaids, but somehow it looked completely different on her. While the others seemed comfortable with all the formal attention, she looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She hurried down the side aisle, trying to catch up with the other bridesmaids who were already taking their positions at the altar. Adrian found himself leaning forward in his seat, wanting to get a better look at her face. When she finally turned toward the congregation, he felt something shift inside his chest. She wasn't traditionally gorgeous in the way of magazine models or the actresses he sometimes dated. But there was something about her that drew him in completely. Maybe it was the way she kept tucking that loose strand of hair behind her ear, or how she seemed genuinely happy to be there despite being late. Her smile was real, not the practiced smile he was used to seeing at these kinds of events. Throughout the entire ceremony, Adrian found it almost impossible to focus on Tyler and his bride. His eyes kept drifting to the mystery bridesmaid. She seemed completely absorbed in the ceremony, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue during the vows. Adrian noticed she wasn't wearing any flashy jewelry, just simple pearl earrings and what looked like an old watch on her wrist. When Tyler kissed his bride, the congregation erupted in applause. Adrian clapped along with everyone else, but he was already planning how he might approach the bridesmaid during the reception. He hadn't felt this interested in anyone in months, maybe even years. The cocktail hour was held in the church's courtyard, a beautiful stone space filled with flowering bushes and twinkling lights. Adrian grabbed a drink from the bar and began making his way through the crowd, looking for the late-arriving bridesmaid. He found her standing near a fountain, talking to an elderly woman who appeared to be someone's grandmother. "I'm so sorry I missed the rehearsal dinner," she was saying, her voice carrying just enough for Adrian to overhear. "My car broke down on Highway 95, and by the time the tow truck came, it was way too late." "Oh, honey, these things happen," the elderly woman replied kindly. "The important thing is you made it here for Rachel's big day." Adrian seized his opportunity and approached them with his most charming smile. "Excuse me," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adrian Chen, a friend of Tyler's from college. I couldn't help but notice your dramatic entrance during the ceremony. The bridesmaid's cheeks turned red again, and she covered her face with her hands. Oh no, was it that obvious? I was trying so hard to be invisible. Don't worry, Adrian laughed. I think most people were too focused on the ceremony to notice. I'm just very observant. She lowered her hands and gave him a grateful smile. I'm Luna Hartwell. And yes, that was me making a complete fool of myself. My Honda decided today was the perfect day to have a breakdown. A Honda? Adrian tried to keep the surprise out of his voice. Most people in this crowd drove cars that cost more than many people's houses. Well, at least you have an interesting story to tell. That's one way to look at it, Luna laughed. The sound was genuine and musical, nothing like the practiced laughs he usually heard at these events. Though I think Rachel might kill me later. Being late to your best friend's wedding isn't exactly forgivable. I'm sure she'll understand, Adrian said, especially since you obviously made such an effort to be here. They talked for another few minutes, with the elderly woman eventually excusing herself to find her table. Adrian learned that Luna was a kindergarten teacher at a public school downtown. She spoke about her students with such genuine affection that Adrian found himself hanging on every word. 5- and 6-year-olds are basically tiny comedians, Luna was explaining. Last week, one of my students told me his mom was pregnant with a baby elephant, because that's what his dad said when he saw her eating pickles and ice cream. Adrian couldn't remember the last time someone had made him laugh so easily. Luna had a way of finding joy in simple things that he'd forgotten was possible. Most of his conversations lately revolved around profit margins and market shares. When the dinner bell rang, signaling that it was time to move into the reception hall, Adrian felt genuinely disappointed that their conversation had to end. I hope we'll get a chance to talk more during dinner, he said. Luna smiled, but there was something hesitant in her expression. Maybe, she said, though fair warning, I'm terrible at small talk with fancy people. Lucky for you, Adrian replied. I'm not that fancy. As they walked toward the reception hall together, Adrian realized he hadn't thought about work once in the past hour. That hadn't happened in years. The Monday morning after Tyler's wedding, Adrian found himself doing something he'd never done before. Instead of heading straight to his downtown office, he made a detour to Maple Elementary School on the east side of the city. He'd spent most of Sunday thinking about Luna and her infectious laugh, and by Sunday night, he'd made up his mind to see her again. He parked his Porsche 2 blocks away and walked to a small coffee shop near the school. The neighborhood was nothing like the upscale areas where he usually spent his time. The buildings were older, some needing fresh paint, but there was a warmth to the place that felt genuine. Kids rode their bikes on the sidewalks while their parents called after them to be careful. Adrian ordered 2 coffees, one black for himself and one with cream and sugar, hoping he'd guessed Luna's preference correctly. He also grabbed a box of donuts, thinking her students might enjoy them. At exactly 7:30, he positioned himself near the school's front entrance. Teachers were arriving, most carrying heavy bags and looking like they needed coffee desperately. Adrian felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since high school. Usually asking someone out was simple. Expensive dinner, nice wine, done. But something told him Luna would run in the opposite direction if he tried that approach. When Luna appeared, walking quickly up the school steps with a canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder, Adrian's heart actually skipped a beat. She wore a simple blue dress with comfortable flats, and her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked tired but beautiful. Luna, he called out, jogging to catch up with her. She turned around, clearly surprised. Adrian, what are you doing here? He held up the coffee cups and donuts, suddenly feeling foolish. I thought you might need some caffeine to start the week. And maybe your students would like some donuts? Luna stared at him for a moment, then broke into that genuine smile he'd been thinking about all weekend. You drove all the way across town to bring me coffee? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a little crazy, Adrian admitted. But I really enjoyed talking with you on Saturday, and I was hoping maybe we could do it again sometime. That's very sweet, Luna said, accepting the coffee gratefully. But you should know I don't really date much. Especially not what? Luna looked at his expensive watch, then at his perfectly tailored suit. Rich guys from fancy weddings. We tend to live in different worlds. Adrian felt a pang of something he couldn't quite identify. What if I told you I'm not as fancy as I look? Are you trying to tell me that suit came from Target? Luna asked with a raised eyebrow. Adrian laughed. Okay, you got me there. but maybe we could start with something simple. Coffee, lunch. I promise no five-star restaurants or anything intimidating. Luna seemed to consider this for a long moment. There's a diner called Pete's about 10 minutes from here. They make the best grilled cheese sandwiches in the city. If you can handle eating somewhere that doesn't take reservations, maybe we could meet there after school sometime. I think I can manage that, Adrian said, grinning. That afternoon, Adrian did something else he'd never done. He traded his Porsche for his assistant's Honda Civic. He'd told Jennifer he needed to borrow it for a business meeting, which wasn't technically a lie. The business of getting to know Luna better was the most important thing on his agenda. Pete's Diner was exactly the kind of place Adrian would never normally visit. The vinyl seats were patched with duct tape, the lighting was harsh fluorescent, and the menu was laminated and slightly sticky. But when Luna walked in and her face lit up at seeing him there, Adrian decided it was perfect. "I can't believe you actually came," Luna said, sliding into the booth across from him. "I half expected you to look this place up online and run away." "The reviews are actually pretty good," Adrian said. 4 stars on Google," Luna laughed. "You actually looked it up?" That's both thorough and slightly concerning. They ordered grilled cheese sandwiches and fries, and Adrian found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did. Luna told him about her day, how one of her students had announced to the class that his dad's new girlfriend had really big eyeballs, and how another student had tried to convince her that homework should be illegal because it made his brain tired. "They keep me laughing," Luna said, dipping a fry in ketchup. "Some days I feel more like an entertainer than a teacher, but I love it. There's something pure about seeing the world through their eyes." "You're lucky," Adrian said. "I can't remember the last time my job made me laugh." "What do you do?" Luna asked. "You mentioned business, but Tyler introduced you to everyone as his successful friend. That could mean anything from selling insurance to running a Fortune 500 company." Adrian felt his stomach tighten. He'd been dreading this question. "I work in tech," he said carefully. "Software development, mostly. It's pretty boring stuff." "Boring enough to afford designer suits?" Luna teased. "I do okay," Adrian said, hoping to change the subject. "What about you? Have you always wanted to be a teacher?" Luna's expression grew more serious. "Not always. When I was younger, I thought I'd be a lawyer or maybe work in business like my—" She paused, seeming to catch herself. "Like some people in my family. But after my parents died, I moved in with my grandmother, and she taught me that helping people was more important than making money." "I'm sorry about your parents," Adrian said softly. "It was a long time ago. I was 12. Grandma Rose raised me from then on." Luna smiled, but Adrian could see the sadness behind it. "She's in her 80s now and not doing so well. I spend most of my free time taking care of her. That must be difficult." "It is, but she sacrificed a lot for me. It's my turn now." Luna took a sip of her coffee. "Actually, taking care of her medical expenses is part of why I dream of starting a scholarship fund someday. I see so many bright kids in my classroom who won't get the chances they deserve just because their families can't afford it. If I could help even a few of them." Adrian felt something twist in his chest. Here was this amazing woman, struggling to pay her grandmother's medical bills while dreaming of helping other people's children. He could write a check right now that would solve all her problems and fund her scholarship dreams 10 times over. But he knew instinctively that offering would be the end of whatever was developing between them. Over the following weeks, Adrian found himself living a strange double life. During the day, he ran his company, made million-dollar decisions, and attended board meetings. But in the evenings, he became someone else entirely. He kept the borrowed Honda and left his expensive watches at home. When he took Luna out, it was to places like movie theaters, mini golf courses, and small family restaurants. Luna slowly began to trust him more. She talked about her students with endless enthusiasm, shared stories about her grandmother's younger days, and gradually opened up about her own dreams and fears. Adrian found himself more genuinely happy than he'd been in years. With Luna, he wasn't the CEO or the millionaire or the guy everyone wanted something from. He was just Adrian, and that seemed to be enough. But the deception was getting harder to maintain. His business partner, Kevin, kept asking why he was suddenly unavailable for evening meetings. His phone buzzed constantly with urgent calls that he had to step away to take, making excuses to Luna about work emergencies. 3 weeks into their relationship, as they sat sharing a pizza at a small Italian place Luna loved, she looked at him with those observant eyes that had first caught his attention. "Adrian," she said carefully, "I feel like there are things you're not telling me." His heart pounded. "What do you mean?" "I mean, for someone who works in boring tech stuff, you sure get a lot of urgent phone calls." Adrian's stomach dropped. He set down his slice of pizza, trying to think of a believable explanation. "It's just work stuff. You know how demanding clients can be." Luna studied his face in the dim light of the restaurant. "Adrian, I teach 5-year-olds for a living. I can tell when someone isn't being completely honest with me." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed again. The caller ID showed Kevin's name, and Adrian knew this was probably the 4th time his business partner had tried to reach him today. He'd been ignoring calls all evening, but Kevin wouldn't keep trying unless something was seriously wrong. "I'm sorry," Adrian said, standing up quickly. "I really need to take this one. Give me 2 minutes." He stepped outside the restaurant, already dreading what Kevin was going to say. Finally, Kevin's voice came through the phone, sharp with frustration. "Where have you been? The Richardson deal is falling apart, and they're threatening to walk if we don't get back to them by tomorrow morning." Adrian ran his hand through his hair. The Richardson contract was worth $3 million, and he'd completely forgotten about the deadline. "What exactly are they asking for?" "The same thing they've been asking for all week, remember? The thing we were supposed to discuss in the meeting you missed on Tuesday, and Wednesday, and today?" "Kevin, I can explain." "No, you can't, not really. Because I have no idea what's going on with you lately. You're distracted, you're missing important calls, and yesterday I watched you drive away from the office in Jennifer's Honda. Are you having some kind of breakdown?" Adrian glanced back through the restaurant window and saw Luna checking her phone, probably wondering what was taking him so long. "I'm handling some personal business." "Personal business that's more important than the company we've spent 5 years building?" The accusation hit harder than Adrian expected, mostly because Kevin wasn't wrong. For the past month, Adrian had been treating his multi-million-dollar company like a side hobby. Important decisions were getting delayed, and he'd pushed off 3 major client meetings to spend time with Luna. "Look, I'll call Richardson first thing in the morning and fix this," Adrian said. "And I'll be in the office early tomorrow to catch up on everything else." "You better be, because right now it feels like I'm running this company by myself." Adrian hung up and took a deep breath before going back inside. Luna was twirling spaghetti around her fork, but she looked up expectantly when he sat down. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just a client who likes to panic about deadlines." Adrian forced a smile. "Sorry about that." But Luna was watching him more carefully now. Over the next few days, Adrian noticed her paying attention to things she'd previously overlooked. When his watch caught the light in a certain way, revealing it was definitely not something you could buy at a department store. When the waiter at a casual restaurant treated him with unusual respect, like he was someone important. When he got a phone call and stepped away to take it, she'd watch through the window with a puzzled expression. Adrian tried to be more careful, but the pressure was mounting from both sides. Kevin scheduled an emergency partners meeting for Friday morning. The same morning Luna had asked him to come to her school's fall festival. Adrian had promised to help her run the ring toss booth, but now he was facing the possibility of losing his biggest client if he didn't show up to work. He texted Luna at 6 in the morning. "Something urgent came up at work. I'm so sorry, but I can't make it to the festival today." Her response came back an hour later. "I understand. Hope everything works out." But when he called her that evening, she sounded distant. "How was the festival?" he asked. "Fine. The kids had fun. Mrs. Patterson helped me with the ring toss booth. I really am sorry I couldn't be there. This work situation, it's okay, Adrian. I know work comes first." There was something in her tone that made his chest tight. "That's not true. You know you're important to me, do I, Lun?" His voice was quiet. "Because honestly, I feel like I don't know much about your life at all. Every time I ask about your job, you change the subject. You get mysterious phone calls that you can't take in front of me, and now you're canceling plans for work emergencies that you can't even explain." Adrian wanted to tell her everything right then and there, that he was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing software companies in the state, that his work emergencies involved million-dollar deals and board meetings with investors, that he'd been driving a borrowed car and eating at diners because he was terrified she'd run away. If she knew how wealthy he really was. But before he could find the words, Luna's voice changed completely. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Luna? What's wrong? I have to go. Grandma Rose is in the hospital. The line went dead, leaving Adrian staring at his phone in the empty parking lot outside his office building. For the next 3 days, Luna barely responded to his texts. When she did, her messages were short and stressed. Still at hospital. Doctors running more tests. Can't talk right now. Adrian wanted to go to the hospital, but Luna hadn't told him which one, and he felt like showing up uninvited might make things worse. Instead, he sent flowers to her school and left voicemails that she didn't return. By Wednesday, he was desperate enough to drive to her apartment building, a modest complex in an older part of town. He'd only been there once before, when he'd picked her up for a movie. Now, standing in front of her door at 7 in the evening, he realized he didn't even know if she was home. He knocked gently. "Luna, it's Adrian." When she opened the door, he was shocked by how exhausted she looked. Her eyes were red from crying, and she was wearing the same clothes she'd had on in her profile picture from days ago. "Adrian, I can't really talk right now," she said, not inviting him in. "I've been worried about you. How's your grandmother?" Luna's face crumpled slightly. "Not good. The doctors think she might have had a small stroke. They're keeping her for observation, but at her age..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all?" "No, there's nothing anyone can do right now." Luna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Look, I'm sorry I haven't been returning your calls. I've just been spending all my time at the hospital and dealing with insurance companies and medical bills and..." "Luna, if you need help with the medical bills..." "No." Her voice was sharp, almost angry. "I already told you I can handle my family stuff on my own." Adrian was taken aback by her reaction. "I was just trying to help. I know and I appreciate it, but this isn't your problem to solve." Luna's expression softened slightly. "Adrian, I really care about you, but I'm dealing with a lot right now. My grandmother raised me, and if something happens to her, then let me be there for you. You don't understand. This isn't just about her being sick. There are family things, complicated things that I can't really explain right now." Adrian felt a familiar frustration building. Here was another wall, another secret, another part of Luna's life that she wouldn't let him into. Just like he was keeping her out of his real life, she was clearly keeping him out of hers. "What kind of family things?" he asked. Luna looked away. "I should get back to the hospital. Visiting hours end at 9. Luna, we need to talk about what's happening between us." "All these secrets," says the man who won't tell me what he really does for work, Luna replied. Her eyes flashing, they stared at each other for a moment, both of them recognizing that they'd reached some kind of breaking point, both hiding things that mattered, both scared of what the truth might do to whatever they'd built together. "I should go," Adrian said finally. "Yeah," Luna agreed quietly. "Maybe you should." Adrian didn't hear from Luna for an entire week. No texts, no calls, nothing. Her voicemail was full, and when he tried calling the school, the secretary told him Luna had taken emergency family leave, and they weren't sure when she'd be back. By Thursday, Adrian was climbing the walls. He'd barely slept, couldn't focus on work, and had snapped at Kevin twice during their morning meeting. The not knowing was killing him. Was Luna's grandmother okay? Was Luna okay? Had he completely ruined things between them with that awkward conversation at her door? "You look terrible," Kevin observed as they wrapped up a conference call with their investors. "When's the last time you actually went home and slept in your own bed?" "I'm fine," Adrian muttered, staring at his phone for the 100th time that day, hoping for some sign from Luna. "No, you're not. And whatever personal stuff is going on, it's affecting the company again. Maybe you should just go talk to whoever this is and sort it out." Adrian looked up sharply. "I never said it was about someone." Kevin gave him a look that said he wasn't buying it. "Adrian, I've known you for 8 years. I've seen you stressed about business deals, worried about product launches, and panicked about investor meetings. This is different. This is you checking your phone every 5 minutes and looking like someone kicked your dog." That afternoon, Adrian made a decision that went against every instinct he had about respecting people's privacy. He was going to find Luna, even if it meant showing up uninvited. She'd mentioned once that her grandmother lived in a care facility, and Luna had been spending all her time there recently. He started with the obvious places, the 3 major hospitals in the city and 2 well-known nursing homes. But when he called asking about Rose Hartwell, nobody had any record of that name. Adrian sat in his car outside the third facility, frustrated and more worried than ever. Where was she? Then he remembered something Luna had said weeks ago, almost in passing. She'd mentioned an address once when giving him directions to her apartment. Something about taking a left after the turn that goes toward Grandma's old house. It had been casual, throwaway comment, but Adrian's memory for details was sharp. Luna had said the house was on Bellevue Avenue. Bellevue Avenue. Adrian knew that street name, though he'd never actually driven down it. It was in the historic district, where some of the city's oldest and most expensive homes sat behind gates and perfectly manicured lawns. It seemed like an odd place for Luna to have family connections, but it was his only lead. He drove there just as the sun was beginning to set, not really sure what he was looking for. The street was lined with mansions, each one more impressive than the last. Adrian slowed his car as he passed elaborate iron gates and long driveways that disappeared behind massive oak trees. These weren't just expensive houses, these were the kinds of properties that had been in wealthy families for generations. He was about to give up and head home, when he saw a familiar figure walking up the front steps of a particularly grand estate. Even from a distance, even in the fading light, he recognized Luna's posture and the way she moved. She was dressed in all black and carried herself like someone bearing a heavy weight. Adrian pulled over and sat in his car for several minutes, trying to process what he was seeing. The house behind the gates was enormous, easily twice the size of his own expensive home across town. The grounds were immaculate, with professional landscaping and what looked like a fountain in the circular driveway. A small brass plaque by the gate read Hartwell Estate, Hartwell, Luna's last name. Adrian felt like the pieces of a puzzle were suddenly rearranging themselves in his mind, but the picture they were forming didn't make any sense. Luna drove a beat-up Honda and worried about medical bills. She ate at diners and shopped at discount stores. She talked about her grandmother like she was a sweet old lady in a nursing home, not like she was the owner of a multi-million-dollar estate. He sat there until it was nearly dark, then made another decision that probably crossed several lines. He got out of his car and walked up to the gate. There was an intercom system, but before Adrian could decide whether to use it, the front door of the house opened. Luna appeared in the doorway, and even across the distance of the long driveway their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Luna walked slowly down the driveway toward the gate, her footsteps echoing on the stone path. When she reached the gate, she stood there looking at him through the iron bars, her face unreadable. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "You mentioned Bellevue Avenue once," Adrian said. "I got worried when I didn't hear from you, and I—" He gestured helplessly at the mansion behind her. "Luna, what is this place?" Luna closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, she looked tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. "This is my grandmother's house," she said. "Was my grandmother's house. She passed away on Monday." "Oh, Luna, I'm so sorry." Adrian reached through the bars of the gate wanting to touch her hand, but she stepped back. "The funeral was yesterday. Private service, just family." She looked up at the house, and Adrian could see tears in her eyes. "Grandma Rose built this place with my grandfather back in the 1960s. Hartwell Textiles was their company. They started with nothing and built it into something that employed thousands of people." Adrian felt his world tilting. Hartwell Textiles. He knew that name. Everyone in business knew that name. It was one of the most successful manufacturing companies in the country, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "My parents were supposed to take over the business someday," Luna continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But after they died, Grandma Rose kept everything running until I came of age. The plan was always for me to step in eventually." "But you're a teacher," Adrian said, still trying to make sense of it all. "By choice." Luna's voice got stronger. "When I turned 18, Grandma Rose gave me access to the family trust fund, enough money to live comfortably for several lifetimes. But I didn't want that life. I'd seen how wealth changed people, how it made them treat others differently. I wanted to do something that mattered, something real." Adrian stared at her, and suddenly all the pieces clicked into place. The way she'd refused his offers to help with medical bills, her insistence on paying for her own meals, the careful way she'd avoided talking about her family's background. Luna hadn't been struggling financially. She'd been hiding the fact that she was probably worth more money than he was. So you've been lying to me this whole time, he said. Luna's eyes flashed. Lying? What about you, Adrian? You think I haven't noticed the expensive watches you try to hide? The way restaurant staff treat you like you're someone important? The phone calls you can't take in front of me? That's different. How is it different? Luna stepped closer to the gate, and Adrian could see the anger and hurt in her face. You want to know the truth? Fine. My full name is Luna Hartwell, and I'm worth about $200 million. I live in a tiny apartment and drive an old car because I choose to. I work as a teacher because I believe in making a difference, not because I need the money. She paused, wiping tears from her cheeks. And I've been terrified this whole time that if you found out, you'd be just like every other man who's ever pretended to care about me while really caring about what I could give them. Adrian felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Luna, your turn, she said, crossing her arms. Who are you really, Adrian? And don't tell me you're just some guy who works in tech. Adrian looked at this woman he'd fallen in love with, standing behind the gates of a mansion, challenging him to finally tell the truth. For weeks they'd been dancing around each other, both hiding who they really were, both afraid of being wanted for the wrong reasons. My name is Adrian Chen, he said slowly. I'm the CEO and founder of Chen Technologies. The company is worth about $50 million, which makes me worth roughly the same amount. Luna stared at him, her mouth slightly open. I've been driving my assistant's car and eating at diners because I was afraid you'd run away if you knew I was wealthy, Adrian continued. I fell in love with a kindergarten teacher who cared more about her students than anything else in the world. I didn't want you to see me as just another rich guy trying to buy your attention. They stood there looking at each other through the iron gate, both of them realizing that everything they'd thought they knew about each other had been built on careful omissions and deliberate misdirections. So we're both liars, Luna said finally. Yeah, Adrian agreed. I guess we are. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd just revealed. Luna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing the tears across her cheek. Adrian wanted nothing more than to hold her, but the iron gate felt like more than just a physical barrier now. I can't do this right now, Luna said finally. I just buried my grandmother yesterday, and now I find out that everything we built together was based on lies. Luna, please, can we just talk about this? What's left to talk about? Her voice cracked. You've been pretending to be someone you're not for months. I've been doing the same thing. Maybe we don't actually know each other at all. Adrian watched helplessly as Luna turned and walked back toward the house, her black dress disappearing into the shadows. He stood at the gate for another 10 minutes, hoping she might come back, but the front door remained closed. The drive home was the longest of Adrian's life. He kept replaying their conversation, wishing he'd handled it differently. By the time he reached his own house, a modern glass and steel structure that now felt cold and empty, he'd made a decision. He was going to give Luna space to grieve and process everything, but he wasn't giving up on them. Over the next 2 weeks, Adrian threw himself into work with an intensity that worried Kevin. He stayed late every night, took every meeting, and finally gave the Richardson deal the attention it deserved. But no matter how busy he kept himself, Luna was always in the back of his mind. He drove past Maple Elementary twice, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but the school secretary told him she was still on family leave. He considered sending flowers or a card, but every message he drafted sounded wrong. How do you apologize for falling in love with someone while pretending to be someone else? Meanwhile, Luna was dealing with problems she'd never imagined. Her grandmother's death meant she was now the sole heir to the Hartwell fortune and the family business. Lawyers called constantly with decisions that needed to be made. Board members wanted meetings about the future direction of the company. Financial advisors presented investment strategies that made her head spin. Miss Hartwell, her grandmother's longtime attorney, Mr. Peterson, explained during one particularly overwhelming meeting, "You have several options. You could sell the company, though I'd recommend against that given its current value. You could hire a management team to run it while you maintain ownership. Or you could step in as CEO yourself." Luna sat in her grandmother's old office, surrounded by papers and contracts, feeling more lost than ever. Through the tall windows, she could see the garden where she'd played as a child during summer visits. Back then, this house had felt magical. Now it felt like a beautiful prison. "What would Grandma Rose want me to do?" she asked. Mr. Peterson smiled kindly. "Your grandmother always said that money was just a tool. What mattered was how you used it to help people." That evening, Luna found herself thinking about Adrian for the first time since their confrontation at the gate. Not about his deception, but about the conversations they'd had at Pete's diner. The way his eyes had lit up when she talked about her dreams of starting a scholarship fund. How he'd listened, really listened, when she shared her ideas about helping kids who deserved better chances. She picked up her phone 3 times to call him, but each time she lost her nerve. Adrian was having a similar struggle across town. He'd drafted a dozen text messages and deleted them all. Finally, on a Friday evening 3 weeks after Rose's funeral, he made a decision that felt both terrifying and right. Instead of trying to explain himself with words, he would show Luna what she meant to him. Saturday morning, Luna received an unexpected visitor at the estate. A young woman in a professional suit stood at the gate holding a thick folder. "Miss Hartwell? My name is Patricia Wong and I represent the Chen Foundation. Mr. Chen asked me to deliver this to you personally." Luna accepted the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a check for $5 million, made out to something called the Rose Hartwell Memorial Scholarship Fund. Attached was a single-page letter in Adrian's handwriting. "Luna," it read, "I know you don't want my money, and I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness, but 3 weeks ago, you told me your dream was to help kids get the chances they deserve. Your grandmother just passed away and I thought maybe this could be a way to honor her memory while making your dream come true. The fund is yours completely. I've set it up so I have no control over it and no say in how it's used. I just want you to know that the kindergarten teacher who cared about her students was the person I fell in love with, not the heiress. That hasn't changed." "Adrian?" Luna sank onto the front steps of the mansion, tears streaming down her face. But for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of sadness or anger. They were tears of recognition. Adrian had listened to her. Really listened. Not to Luna Hartwell, the heiress, but to Luna, the teacher who dreamed of changing children's lives. He'd taken her most cherished goal and made it possible, then stepped back without asking for anything in return. An hour later, Adrian was in his office catching up on weekend emails when his assistant called. "Mr. Chen, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Luna and it's important." Adrian's heart nearly stopped. "Send her up." When Luna walked into his office, Adrian was struck by how different she looked. Gone was the simple dress and ponytail. She wore an elegant navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and her hair was styled in a sophisticated updo. But her eyes were the same, warm, intelligent, and now rimmed with red from crying. "The scholarship fund," she said without preamble. $5 million. "You don't have to thank me," Adrian said quickly. "I meant what I wrote. It's yours, no strings attached. That's not why I'm here." Luna stepped closer to his desk. "I'm here because you proved something I needed to know." "What's that?" "That you fell in love with the real me." Luna's voice was soft but steady. "Not the money or the family name or what I could give you. You fell in love with someone who wanted to help children, and when you had the chance to make that dream come true, you did it without asking for anything back." Adrian stood up slowly. "Luna, I owe you an apology." "I should have been honest from the beginning." "We both should have been honest," Luna interrupted. "But I understand now why you weren't. We were both scared of the same thing, being wanted for the wrong reasons." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, placing it on his desk. "I'm setting up my own foundation to manage the family's charitable giving. I want to focus on education, on giving kids the opportunities they deserve. I was wondering if you might be interested in partnering with me." Adrian looked down at the card. "Luna Hartwell, President, Hartwell Foundation." "Are you asking me to work with you?" he said. "I'm asking if you want to help me change some lives," Luna replied. "Together. As equals this time, with no more secrets between us." Adrian walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "What about us? Not the business partnership, but us?" Luna smiled, and it was the same genuine, beautiful smile that had stopped his heart at Tyler's wedding. "I think we should start over. No pretending, no borrowed cars, no hiding who we are." "Hi," Adrian said, extending his hand. "I'm Adrian Chen. I'm a tech CEO. I'm probably too obsessed with work. And I'm completely in love with a kindergarten teacher who happens to be worth more money than I'll ever see." Luna laughed and shook his hand. "Hi, I'm Luna Hartwell. I'm an heiress who'd rather be in a classroom. I cry at children's art projects. And I'm completely in love with a CEO who brought me coffee on my first day back at school." 6 months later, The Hartwell Chen Educational Foundation had awarded its first round of scholarships to 50 deserving students. The ceremony was held at Maple Elementary, where Luna had returned to teaching part-time while managing the foundation. As Adrian watched Luna hand diplomas to beaming 6-year-olds, he thought about how far they'd come. They'd learned to trust each other with their real selves, both the wealthy, powerful sides and the parts that just wanted to make a difference in the world. Ready for the next adventure? Luna asked as they walked hand in hand toward the car after the ceremony. Adrian squeezed her hand. With you? I'm ready for anything. This time they both drove their own cars.